The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Luka Doncic scores his first triple-double as a Laker.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast.
Luka Doncic and his first triple-double as a Laker. It comes against his former team. He was very clearly keyed up for this one. There's no question about that. And, you know, particularly in the first half, Andy, you got a full taste of all the range of things that Luka can do when he is playing well, feeling comfortable, all that stuff. That first half had all of it.
Luka is now officially averaging a triple-double against the Dallas Mavericks, 19 points, 15 rebounds, 12 assists against 2 turnovers. That is not a bad way to start, I guess, your stats against the one team you had never played in your career. He also had 3 steals and 2 blocks to go along with that. It was funny. There was a sequence in the first quarter where Luka had back-to-back threes. The second one ended up getting wiped out during a timeout. Dallas challenged it, and they were correct. Luka, in attempting to step back, his foot was barely on the line, but it was. But on the Spectrum Sportsnet feed of this game, after the second 3 in the Dallas timeout, they cut over to Mark Cuban, who, for those who are unaware, he is now a minority owner of the team. He does not have nearly the same control as he had before. Some would say he has damn near none at this point.
If he had any semblance of control or say over personnel decisions in Dallas, Luka would still be there. So
right, and that was the look on Cuban's face. I tweeted out at Cam Brothers, his thought bubble was probably something along the lines of, "Yeah, bro, don't blame me for this bleep." Like He had this look on his face, like, I cannot believe this guy is on another team. You had the range of playmaking from Luka. You had the range of shot making from Luka. You had the range of early techs from Luka. He got teed up very quickly.
Experience.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, you got the whole deal. But there were just, we'll get into Luka because obviously his performance in that storyline against this team, it's obviously the overarching story, but this was a game that you could tell meant a lot to Luka on a lot of different levels.
I appreciated the candor that he had after the game, talking about not just the emotion that went into it. It was, like you say, obviously an important one, one that has taken up, like, you get anybody, you have those big events, you have all that initial rush of energy, and then you got to kind of get through it. And this was, you could see the difference in the first half and the second half. I think he did use a lot of emotional energy just in the lead up and the afterwards. But he said when it was over, he was asked about closure. Like, does this kind of give you some closure on it? He's like, no, like, we're not done yet. Like, it doesn't happen instantly. And it's just a reminder, I think, for basketball fans, for people observing the Lakers and all that, like, this process for Luka to become not just, more comfortable playing with LeBron, not just more comfortable playing with, Reeves, getting used to Redick's system, the defensive rotation. It's still going to take time to get used to literally being a Laker, literally having your home base be Los Angeles. Like, all of that stuff is just going to take time. But in the meantime, the Lakers continue to win games, and they're doing it without Luka, having to be at his best. They moved to 14 games over 500 with this win on Tuesday. And we're certainly seeing between Saturday and I think especially again, the first half of this game, and then moments, in the third and the fourth, but we're seeing what it can look like, and we're seeing what Doncic brings and how he changes what the Lakers are capable of in these moments of really good play. And when it clicks, man, we saw it on Saturday again. We saw it tonight. Oh my God, it is fun basketball to watch.
Piggybacking onto the piece of, the piece about this with closure, Luka said, quote, the closure is going to take a while, I think, because he was asked if he found closure in this game.
Yeah.
Closure is going to take a while, I think. It's not ideal, it being how I ended up here. And I think a lot of what was being messaged along the way. But then he said, quote, but like I said, I'm glad this game is over. There's a lot of emotions, but we go little by little and every day is better. And you can, if nothing else, Luka is leaning into the idea of, I am announcing myself as a Laker. I am ingratiating myself with this franchise, with this city. Began a couple weeks ago when he donated $500,000 to the wildfire relief. I don't know if you saw, but before the game, he had set up a parking lot where your parking for this game, if you happen to get this lot, was prepaid courtesy of Luka Doncic. There was also a Jumpman ad that debuted today, and this was just chef's kiss petty. It's a figure that is supposed to be Luka. I don't think it was actually him, but he's in front of an absolutely sick-looking purple sports car that I have no idea what type of car it is, because A, I'm not a car guy, and B, even if I was, I would never be able to afford a car like this, so why bother learning what it is? But he's changing out this license plate, make it like a purple 77, and in the background, that country song, All My Exes Live in Texas, is playing, and that's just, again, there's a lot for him to wrap his head around, I think, still now, but the guy is very much, I think, embracing the idea of A, being a Laker, B, being in a really good situation. And the more time that is passing with this team, the more you see him just smiling, animated, and I think he recognizes, man, like, this isn't how I wanted it to happen, but I got a good thing going right now.
He didn't get traded to like Charlotte or something. I mean, like,
Always
it's not
Charlotte,
Orlando. I mean, or
always.
he didn't end up in some sort of NBA backwater location. Like, he is with the Los Angeles Lakers, and flawless team, no. Flawless management, no. But like, there are worse places to end up than LA playing for the Lakers. And
you could be on a team dumb enough to trade Luka Doncic,
for example. And you start to go through it, and like that first half, LeBron is, we're getting used to this with LeBron, where you can look up and you say like, oh, it wasn't a great game all the way through, and this, that, whatever it might be, and you look up and he's got like 26 and 12 and 8, and you're like, it doesn't, and like that becomes the sort of ordinary LeBron game. And like Luka, the peripheral numbers, aside from the scoring, were huge, and his rebounding in the first half, his ball movement in the first half, the level of playmaking the Lakers were able to put together, particularly again in that first half, was stunning at times. They really had a good rhythm working between Reeves and LeBron and Luka. And you just, if he's not going to shoot 35% for the rest of the season. And the lines for something like tonight, where he, gets the triple double, but it's a 19-point triple double when he shoots, 10 of 19 or something like that, with a couple more threes. He's not 1 of 7. Like, that 19-point triple double becomes a 29-point triple double or 30-point triple double.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Wednesday night features a ton of interesting NBA action. The Celtics are 4-point road favorites against the Pistons. The Raptors, 9.5-point dogs in Indiana. And the largest line of the night, Oklahoma City favored by 17 at Brooklyn. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast.
Reiterating some points and clarifying, I think, his position on a few points that he was asked about when he talked to Kelsey Conway and Jeff Hobson in Mobile, Alabama at the Senior Bowl about their intention around the Bengals stars, the Bengals money situation, and we've got a word of the day later on in the podcast. But it starts with the Bengals stars and some long-term deals the Bengals would like to get done.
Yeah, I thought that was the main thing for me, Jake, today, is that the Bengals, you mentioned the word of the day, and the word of the day we'll get to, because I do agree with you, that should be the word of the day. But the theme of the day is two words: champagne problems. And that was a quote that Zach Taylor used, sidebar, not on the podium. And this is going to be the Duke Tobin reaction episode mostly. Probably the only time I mentioned Zach in this episode. But that was interesting to me because he said this is champagne problems. Having Joe Burrow go out there and say, yeah, we want to pay T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson and Jamar Chase, and having to pay Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson. And Duke Tobin made it very, very clear from the jump when it came to T. Like, yeah, we've wanted to pay T for years. For years. I mean, that was one thing that he reiterated multiple times. So I do think that it's crystal clear the Bengals plan. Whether or not that plan will come together is a whole nother topic, and we have plenty of time to discuss that. But as far as what they want to do and what their plan is as of now, Tuesday, February 25th, Duke Tobin made it clear. I'm in Indianapolis here at the Combine in the nice Indianapolis Convention Center in this nice ballroom that they put together for the media. And yeah, to me, it was a message not only to the fans, of course, in media, but to the rest of the league that's gathered here in Indianapolis, because you know that there are 31 other teams, and at least half of those other teams would love for T. Higgins to get to free agency. And at least 10 of them would probably make a strong push to sign him. A lot of teams would love for Trey Hendrickson to be on the trade block or Jamar Chase to be on the trade block. And the Bengals made it very, very clear that they do not plan on that happening with any of these guys, and they want to keep them all long-term.
Yeah, and it wasn't just those guys either. There was a mention of Mike Gesicki. The tone was different there. We'll get to that, but it did come up. And I found that interesting. I did find it interesting because it came up. And Duke had positive things to say about Mike Gesicki, and I do think the tone was different there. I also think the tone was actually a little bit different on Trey for a subtle reason that we'll talk about, but not significantly different. It's just that he is under contract, and so that does make his situation slightly different. He's under contract. It was his second contract, plus they had the year extension there, so a different situation than T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Another thing about this that I found quite interesting, a couple points that I wanted to bring up related to what you were talking about. One, I think that a lot of things Duke said in terms of who he was speaking to, you said, he's speaking to the fans, he's speaking to other NFL teams, because we saw reports this week that were the rest of the NFL is skeptical of the Bengals getting this stuff done, right? So yeah, it's talking to the rest of the league. I think for sure when you hear it from the horse's mouth and then Zach's mouth, I guess two horses here, then that's a message to the whole league, right? That is the intention. That is the plan. Now, like you said, whether or not it gets done, there's a negotiation to be had. The other thing that was curious to me is, Duke says, oh, we always wanted to keep T around long term. And I understand that people probably hear that and think, you tagged him and didn't negotiate with him last year. What are you talking about? You always wanted to do it. You didn't even try last year. And that's where it's relatively subtle. He was asked what changed, and he didn't want to draw a ton of attention to it, but he mentioned that the representation changed for T. Higgins. And that came up, reaffirms everything that we've thought and what we've been talking about really since December when Joe Burrow first brought this up and the agent change stuff was in the news. Something has changed there. And now there's this agenda, this clear agenda, this plan has changed. Whatever they did last year, they realized didn't work. And it spurred, and you heard this with the way Duke was talking about their annoyance with the way the season went. It spurred this plan that we've been talking about now for, it feels like a couple of months.
I do think that the agent frustration element, it can't be understated. And here's why. Because I asked Duke, I was like, because we did little sidebar conversations after with Zach and Duke, where he met with the local writers. You're not going to see video of this. There's only audio. And it was interesting because I asked that. I was like, what changed with T? And he's like, what do you mean what changed with T? He's like, I've been wanting to pay T for years. And then it got brought up, that report that they tried to reach out to sign him, made him an offer in 2022. Obviously that didn't happen. And then last year it went the way it did after they tagged T. I don't think anyone thought a deal was getting done then, right? But then Duke was like, we've tried to sign T multiple times. And so I think that whatever bridge was there, it was beyond the point of being on fire between David Mulligetta and the Bengals. And I don't know why, like, the details are kind of irrelevant, but the point is something was in the way there because they love T. It's not like they didn't want to pay T. And, I think that what that looks like is quite interesting, but clearly it wasn't as simple as Joe Burrow made a comment and now, oh my goodness, we got to keep T. It's a scramble drill. Like, I think that this is far more planned out. There's more behind it. And I think T is probably the first domino, and I don't even just mean franchise tag. Would not shock me at all if T is the first one to get done long-term, which if I would have said that 4 months ago, even 6 months ago, 8 months, you could go back and back and back. You'd be like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. And yet it feels like that's probably the case.
I mean, Duke practically said it. He's set to hit free agency. They're incentivized to get that one done. That one is the first on the docket. The Jamar Chase deal that is coming will make him the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL, according to Duke Tobin. Not too worried about that one getting done, I would say at this point. Trey Hendrickson, a bit more nebulous, a bit more complicated, but that agent change, while significant for the Bengals, I do want to take a second here, James, to say that at some point they're probably going to have to work with David Mulligetta, athletes first, those kinds of structures. It doesn't feel to me like they are eager to play in those waters. Duke Tobin spending a lot of time talking about how well they've managed the cap, how they don't have all this dead money on the salary cap to deal with. And so that gives them the opportunity to extend these guys. And he would probably tell you that maintaining their flexibility and not pushing a bunch of money into future years like the Eagles have puts them in a position this year where they have that option and they could go a number of different ways if they wanted to. And that's not wrong, but you give something up to get there. And they gave up. I mean, Joe Burrow got hurt 2 years ago. They gave up a season to get there. And so it's not all sunshine and roses. I think they do have to get to a point where they can work with this kind of agency, this kind of representation. And while it's a positive for the Bengals that T. Higgins decided that he would like to have an earnest effort to stay in Cincinnati and that the Bengals are now interested in getting the deal done, that there is a long-term issue there, I think, with the agent as well.
The Baltimore Ravens have finally broken their silence on Justin Tucker.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast.
The Justin Tucker situation. Now, John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta were both asked multiple questions about it, and both answered them. If you listen to this morning's episode of Locked On Ravens, I know that there were some questions about would they even answer questions about the Tucker situation, or would they kind of say, here's a statement and, that'll be that. They did answer them. And let's start off with what Eric DeCosta had to say. He went first and was asked, I think, about 3 or 4 questions about the situation in general, but his statement on it at first ended up being the allegations are serious and concerning. The amount of allegations are serious and concerning. I think we're fortunate that the league is doing an investigation. We'll wait as patiently as we can for as much information as we can, and we'll make our decision based on that, and decisions based on that as well. And also, Eric DeCosta said the team, this is a big one. They're going to evaluate the kicker position like every position, and they'll go and rank their draft board, which, of course, John Harbaugh's statement on that a little more direct. But even so, I think that without the Tucker allegations and everything, people were still going to be wondering, well, what does the future hold for Justin Tucker, right? I think that we got a pretty clear answer, not in terms of like whether he'll be on the team or not, but whether the Ravens are evaluating kicker options. And the answer to that, my big takeaway, is a resounding yes. DeCosta was asked when he and the Ravens first learned of the Justin Tucker allegations. He said, quote, we were aware that a local media outlet was preparing to do a story on Justin Tucker, and that was the first time we became aware of those allegations or the potential allegations that might result. He also said, quote, I did meet with Justin. I'm going to keep those comments to myself. Personal conversations with Justin is probably the smart thing to do, but at that point we did meet, and that's what I'm going to say about that. So that pretty much sums up what Eric DeCosta had to say about it. John Harbaugh, on the other hand, he had some things to say on it as well. Kind of not this exact same line of questioning, but there were definitely some more line of questionings. John Harbaugh said, this is not something that you want to wake up and read. You don't want to read about it. The things that are hurtful and harmful to people, there's too many headlines like that, too many stories that you hear that make you sad and disappointed. The NFL is looking into it. They're going to review it. They're going to try to gather all the facts, and I'm sure we'll have an understanding of it at the time. And then once there is an understanding of it, then you'll have a chance to make some decisions and determinations. That's where we're at right now. He was also asked when he learned about the Justin Tucker situation. He said, I learned after Eric told me. I think right before it came out, maybe the banner had called Eric and told him that there was something coming out. We didn't know anything about what it was going to be, so I knew what it was when I read it. And then a week and a half, 2 weeks after that, I called Justin on a Sunday morning. We had a conversation about it. We talked about it more from a perspective of being together for all these years and kind of what he was going through and what he was dealing with that and how he was handling it with his family. That's really what we talked about. Now, these comments, the NFL is doing an investigation. I'm sure John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta were choosing their words carefully, and the NFL is going to do their due diligence. And that obviously was a big point of what Harbaugh and DeCosta had to say. But John Harbaugh was then asked about what about the kicker position in general. He ended up saying, well, quote, we're looking at kickers. The kicker position would have been a priority no matter what. Justin's our kicker. We love him. Always expected him to keep going forever, but nobody goes forever. And whether the Ravens, they have 11 draft picks. They could easily, if there's a kicker they really like, if they find a guy that they really like, they want to go and figure out, okay, this is the kicker of the future. Because look, Tucker, if he stays on the team or if not, doesn't matter which scenario, he's not the next 15-year kicker of the Baltimore Ravens. So for the Ravens, they're going to look at that position, and it's not like John Harbaugh or Eric DeCosta's comments tell me that, okay, he's definitely staying on the team or definitely not staying on the team. But after a while of allegations popping up, I think people wanted to hear from Harbaugh and DeCosta. This was the opportunity for them to speak their mind on it a little bit, obviously while staying within the confines of the investigation and what they want to say. I don't know what the personal conversations between Harbaugh and DeCosta and Tucker were, but it's a situation where we don't know how long the NFL's investigation is going to go. This could be an investigation that lasts maybe a couple of weeks, maybe it goes a couple of months, but if it extends through beyond the draft, I'd still expect the Ravens to operate as, okay, look, we're going to go and figure out what we need to do to secure. And regardless, I think there's going to be competition for Justin Tucker. Let's just put a scenario out that Justin Tucker stays on the team. Let's say that's the decision the Ravens make and he ends up staying. I think there will still be, whether you want to call it competition or just another legitimate kicker in the organization to compete with him, which honestly, like, we haven't really seen over the course of Justin Tucker's career. Yes, there have been camp bodies that have come in and contributed and taken the load off of Justin Tucker, but I think this is now a different situation, allegations aside, and that's a different conversation, but just of, okay, how much does Justin Tucker left in the tank, or Justin Tucker have left in the tank in general? So about 4 or 5 questions each for John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta. This is probably not the last we are going to hear about that situation, right? I mean, we're going to hear about it for as long as it goes. And if he stays on the team, we're going to hear about it until he retires and probably after that. But the Ravens have a big decision to make here. And whether new allegations come out or not about Tucker, we're going to have to remain to be seen. Maybe new things are uncovered by the NFL that we don't even know about right now. But Harbaugh and DeCosta staying pretty consistent in the fact that, DeCosta ended up hearing it from Harbaugh ended up hearing it from DeCosta. I got that mixed up. Harbaugh got it from DeCosta, and then DeCosta said that the local media outlet, that being the Baltimore Banner, they were preparing to do the story on Justin Tucker. So it was good to kind of hear them talk about the situation. Again, I know, they weren't going to go up there and like either bury him or go into immense detail on what they had heard in the investigation. That was never an expectation. It should have never been an expectation for anybody that they were going to go in there and just go up on that podium and speak for 30 minutes on Justin Tucker, dive into every single detail, right? That was never going to be the case. But as the situation evolves, so will the opinions, so will the Ravens' decision-making. And I don't know when we're going to get a decision on Justin Tucker. Obviously, in terms of cap implications, I've said this multiple times on the show, the Ravens can save money if they release Justin Tucker as a post-June 1 cut. They can announce that before the new league year starts. They can designate 2 guys to be post-June 1 cuts before post-June 1, so they get that money right up front, right when free agency starts. Marcus Williams is going to be one of those if they so choose, and whether the NFL's investigation turns up stuff the Ravens aren't comfortable with, or they decide they want to move on, or they want a fresh start or whatever, the Ravens can use the money for, I think it's right around $5 million in savings, if I'm not mistaken. They can use that money at the start of free agency if they designate Tucker alongside Marcus Williams as a post-June 1 cut. So it's about a bunch of different factors, obviously on field with Tucker, and obviously the off-field allegation situation that you could determine, hey, is Justin Tucker going to be a member of this team in 2024 or 2025 now, or is he not? So all of those things factoring in, but John Harbaugh, Eric DeCosta, the Baltimore Ravens breaking their silence on the Justin Tucker situation. And of course, we'll continue to talk about that as it all develops. But coming up, we're going to be talking about John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta making some bold claims, particularly on Ronnie Stanley. Also, Mark Andrews, as his future is set in stone in Baltimore, as some might think. We're going to dive into all that and more coming up next on Locked On Ravens. Back here, Locked On Ravens, Kevin Ostreicher still here with you on this Tuesday instant reaction live edition of the show. Love these lives here. Love interacting with the chat. I see Joe is full force in the chat. Appreciate you tuning in, Joe. We got some stuff from Zeke I want to get to as well. Joe saying trade for Jake Bates, Arkansas legend over there doing. Look, that's a great kicker. The Ravens, they're going to have to decide what they want to do with their kicker. I see Lettuce here, trade Justin to the Browns or cut him. Hey, Myles Garrett for Justin Tucker. Maybe the Ravens can throw in like a 5th to make it fair, right? That's my agenda here for the Ravens. But let's talk a little bit about the Ravens with Ronnie Stanley, because both John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta, they had some things to say about Ronnie. It started off with Eric DeCosta. It's a big conversation point. Ronnie Stanley is the Ravens' biggest free agent. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about that here. And so on re-signing Ronnie Stanley, Eric DeCosta says, you never want to say 100%, but I feel good that we'll have a healthy debate, a good process. We're going to meet with his agent in Indy this week, and I'm optimistic that we'll be able to get a deal done. Now, optimistic is a great word, and I feel like for the Ravens, if there was a free agent to prioritize, it would be Ronnie Stanley. So I think that's a great sign, because I feel like even if the Ravens do move off of Ronnie Stanley, they have a couple of options. John Harbaugh did talk about that, where, Roger Rosengarten could flip over to the left side and they draft a right tackle, or they sign somebody, who knows. But Stanley is projected right now on the market right around 2 years, $20 million per season, $21 million per season. the increase in salary cap helps the Ravens potentially go out there and sign a guy like Ronnie back, where an extra $5 to $10 million is not going to make or break the Ravens offseason. Like they can go out there and sign 5 different big free agents now, but maybe the Ravens were only comfortable offering Ronnie a certain amount, but with that cap increase, they can up their offer a little bit. Ronnie's obviously been a lifelong Raven, has been one of the most consistent offensive linemen in this team's history, despite the injury history that he's had. And John Harbaugh kind of took it a bit of a step further with Ronnie Stanley, saying that, look, he said, I think we'll probably keep Ronnie, hopeful that we will. So Harbaugh and DeCosta seem to be on the same wavelength that Ronnie's going to be a part of this team in 2025. That was one of my big takeaways. Nothing set in stone. I don't want to come on here and, oh, yeah, guaranteed Ronnie Stanley's going to be a member of the Ravens. Of course not. That's not what I'm trying to say whatsoever here. But both Harbaugh and DeCosta seemed pretty optimistic. DeCosta using the word optimistic, and John Harbaugh even going a step further than that to say that Ronnie will be a part of the team in 2025. Plus, I think something we have to remember, and this may be one of the more underrated facts here, the Ravens offensive line is a pretty young group if you take out Ronnie Stanley. Stanley has become kind of the veteran leader in that room. If Patrick McCary does leave, it's Tyler Linderbaum, Roger Rosengarten is your 2 mainstay guys, but then even if you want to throw in guys from the roster to start next season, like a Daniel Falele or an Andrew Voorhees, I mean, that's still a really young group. So I think it's important for Baltimore to have a veteran leader. The craziest timeline, in my opinion, on the offensive line would be Kevin Zeitler coming back to the Ravens on a deal, and he ends up shifting in for Falele, and then they bring back Ronnie Stanley, and we're like right back to where we were almost in 2023, which would be unbelievable. But look, I think that Ronnie Stanley, it is a good move if the Ravens do that. And I see Zeke saying main priority for the Ravens needs to be keeping Stanley and rebuilding the offensive line. This was always going to be a multi-year offensive line rebuild, starting off last season where they knew they needed to get younger, more athletic on the line. That's why I don't think Kevin Zeitler is realistic, honestly. The Ravens have a plan for what they want to do. But if a team like the Commanders comes in, who have a bunch of cap space, and they want to offer Ronnie a 2-year deal worth $50 million total, $25 per year, the Ravens probably wouldn't be comfortable matching that, but maybe Stanley does take some level of a hometown discount to be able to go in and say, hey, I want to finish my career in Baltimore. I don't know how many years Ronnie Stanley has left. I'd be comfortable offering Ronnie a 2-year deal, maybe 3 at the max if I'm Baltimore. If a team comes in, offers 4, I don't think Baltimore goes that high. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Wednesday night features a ton of interesting NBA action. The Celtics are 4-point road favorites against the Pistons. The Raptors, 9.5-point dogs in Indiana, and the largest line of the night, Oklahoma City favored by 17 at Brooklyn. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Khalil Shakir signs a contract extension.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast.
Khalil Shakir locked up, 4-year contract extension worth up to $60.2 million, $32 million guaranteed. Khalil Shakir staying in Buffalo. He signed through the 2029 season. Let's break it down. So Shakir was a 2022 fifth-round pick, just turned 25 years old. And he was entering the last year of his rookie contract. And that was a 4-year, $4 million deal. And his salary in 2025 was $3.3 million due to the proven performance escalator, which exists for non-first-round picks for the 4th year of the rookie contract. It gives them a bump if they meet certain playing time thresholds, or even there's some Pro Bowl incentives as well. So Shakir gets a nice extension, and he had a good season for the Buffalo Bills, really the number one receiver for the team. I use that loosely, right? Not necessarily Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, but for the Bills, the receiver that had the most targets, the most receptions, the most yards, he was the guy, right? He had 21% of the team's targets. And so last season on the field, 61% of snaps, 76 catches on 97 targets, 821 yards, 4 touchdowns. Big time yards after catch contributions. That's 8.09 yards after catch per reception. Doesn't drop the football, only a 1% drop rate. Actually, a 50% contested catch win rate, which is really good. And then, of course, primarily a slot player, 76% of his passing down snaps coming from the slot, with about a quarter of his snaps coming from the outside. So a guy that functions mostly from the slot, but I'd be careful to label him a slot only, although I do think his best utilization is in the slot. And I thought he had a good season, really, really efficient. And he's been on this really nice ascension where, as a rookie, didn't get a lot of opportunity except for late in the year. He kind of started to come along, had some production in the playoffs. And then last year, when I say last year, I mean 2023, he really became the go-to guy for this Bills offense, as Stephon Diggs really just whatever happened there with fitting into the offense or maybe some declining skill. Over the last 12 games of the season, Stephon Diggs was not as productive as Khalil Shakir. In fact, I think there was some type of crazy stat where Shakir had more yards than Diggs on 60 less targets, something crazy like that over the last 12 games. And so that was kind of that moment where you felt like he was taking a bigger role in the offense. And then this past year, he winds up having 100 targets and leading the team in receptions and yards. And I think we can all appreciate the skill set, the competitive nature that he has. Good route runner, reliable hands, outstanding after the catch. In fact, number 2 in the NFL in yards after catch per reception last year. I mean, he's really good with the ball in his hands, and he's a guy that has the ability to win at all levels of the field. And I love that about him. And I think I'd label Khalil Shakir like a stabilizing player for this offense where, Josh Allen needs a completion. He knows he can find Khalil Shakir, and not only will he be open and available, but he's going to maximize that opportunity with the ball with how competitive he is post catch. And so that's outstanding. He gave this team a screen game, right? I mean, the Bills still don't have a running back screen game, but they sure as heck have a receiver screen game, and Khalil Shakir is a big part of that. Now, I will say something that I thought took away from Khalil Shakir last year. Had a great season, but because I feel like there was a lot of pieces around him that were new, still trying to figure out, the Keon Coleman piece, even the Dalton Kincaid piece, Shakir was relied upon a lot. And I think as things become more stable and even better around Shakir, I think that's going to allow him to do more, especially down the field. I think that's kind of what got lost in the year for Shakir last season, is that he's a good down the field player. A lot of those slot fades deep over the middle of the field, he can help this offense in that capacity. And I'm excited to see him get more chances to do that moving forward, as hopefully things are better around him in terms of the outside receivers and even the tight end consistency with the production there from Josh Allen. But I love the trust that Josh has in Khalil. I think about that touchdown catch that he had against the Rams, where just kind of laid it out there down the field, and out of nowhere, Shakir goes and catches it. And there's a lot of bodies around. I mean, I love the chemistry. I love the trust. And this looks like a really, really good contract for the Bills. We actually talked receivers maybe a week or so ago on the podcast, and a part of that conversation was discussing Khalil Shakir and the contract extension. And, Spot Rack had his market value at $19.4 million. They estimated a 4-year, $77 million deal. And I said at the time, that feels a little high. And I talked about the middle class of wide receivers and how it's kind of a fascinating market where, the top guys, the Justin Jeffersons, the CeeDee Lambs, the Jamar Chases, they're going to get $35 million a year. And then it's kind of wondering, okay, well, if that's what the best guys are getting, and Gabe Davis got $13 million a season, like where the heck do you pay these other players? And so I think we got some clarity with where this deal fell, coming in at a 4-year, $60 million deal. That's an APY of $15 million a season. And as you know, we don't really care that much about APY on this podcast. We care about percentage of cap at signing. And assuming that, this is a deal that is being reported as worth up to $60 million. We don't even know where it actually falls, right? It's probably less than that in terms of true APY. But let's assume that it is a 4-year, $60 million extension. That's going to put him at a percentage of cap at signing of 5.47%. That's right there. Like his neighbors in terms of percentage of cap at signing, Gabe Davis and Darnell Mooney. It's lower than Jerry Jeudy. That's a really healthy spot for a young player that you drafted, developed, meaningful, great chemistry with your quarterback, certainly provides leadership. He's a hard worker. He's wired the right way, military background, seems like he's got a great family. All the things that are going to make you proud to have him on your team. Feels like a really, really good value. And so that leads me to kind of my last point that I want to make here in breaking down this extension is, what does this mean for Khalil Shakir's expectations moving forward? And, look, he's not being paid to be a number one receiver, even though he was last year. I think for Khalil Shakir, it's when it comes to this passing game, being a top 3 option and being that clutch player, being the yards after catch guy, being the guy that Josh Allen trusts to get a bucket when he needs someone to uncover in the middle of the field. And I really don't see any downside to that not continuing. Like, I only see better and better for Shakir and his role in Buffalo, especially as I mentioned, as things do become more stable around him. So I just don't see the risk. Maybe if this was like a $25 million a year deal, you'd be, well, I don't know. But that's not where it came. It came in at a very respectable valuation, and it looks like a good value and a deal that locks in one of the Bills' better draft picks, obviously day 3 guy, and has developed, and excited to see him tied to the Bills through that 2029 season.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Wednesday night features a ton of interesting NBA action. The Celtics are 4-point road favorites against the Pistons. The Raptors, 9.5-point dogs in Indiana. And the largest line of the night, Oklahoma City favored by 17 at Brooklyn. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
But he came through just when the Grizzlies needed him to.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast.
It was a fun one for the Memphis Grizzlies. I mean, it was some people might not thought that was fun. I thought it was fun. That was good hoops. That was really good hoops. 2 teams going basket for basket, right? Bucket for bucket. It was thrilling. It was high entertainment. FedEx Forum was rocking. As a couple players said, I know Desmond Bain said it was nostalgic. It reminded him of, some of those playoff games that the Grizzlies have had in the grindhouse, in recent years. But in the end, the Grizzlies came up with a 151-148 win against the Phoenix Suns in overtime. The stats, I mean, so many big performances across the board on both teams in this game. Jalen Wells, 19 points for the Grizzlies. Jaren Jackson Jr. had 28. John Morant had 29. Desmond Bain, 25. Zach Edey gave you 8 and 8. Santi Aldama had 17 off the bench. Brandon Clark, 14 off the bench. I mean, the Suns had, I think, 5 guys score over 20 points. How often does a team have 5 players score 20 plus and still lose? It's pretty wild. I think Grayson Allen had 21 for them. It looked like he couldn't miss. Bradley Beal had 24 points. Devin Booker had 28 and 10 assists before fouling out. Bol had 23 points. Kevin Durant had 26. I mean, it was high-octane offense on both ends. But your Memphis Grizzlies, they fought, they battled, they got it to overtime, and they pulled it out in the end. And one of the main reasons why they were able to do that was the play of Ja Morant. If you didn't watch the game and you just say, oh, you woke up in the morning, you say, let's see how the Grizzlies did yesterday, and you look at Ja's stats, and you're like, man, he was terrible. Well, yeah, you probably were right in the first half. In fact, you probably were right through 3 quarters. But when that fourth quarter came, it just clicked. It was a change in approach. It was look, my jumper isn't working. I'm just gonna get downhill, and these dudes can't stop me. Ja Morant was incredible. He won the Grizzlies this game. It's so many sequences, but I think he shot 5 of 11 from the fourth quarter. He scored the last 11 points in regulation for the Grizzlies. Overtime, a lot of players stepped up. Jalen Wells being one of the ones as well, but Ja Morant as well with his passing in overtime kind of is where he did most of his work there. But terrific overall performance, all things considered, with Ja Morant in this game. Let's talk about how I think the Grizzlies were down 136 to 132. 136 to 132 in this game. Ja Morant, who at that point I believe was 0 of 10 from three-point range, makes a running three-pointer. I mean, you talk about calling 12. He makes a running three-pointer with 9.9 seconds left. Grizzlies are down 1 at this point. They foul Grayson Allen of the Suns. He misses the first free throw, makes the second. It's 137 to 135. 5.4 seconds remaining in the fourth quarter. Grizzlies call a timeout. Of course, they call 12 afterwards. Ja Morant makes a running shot, ties the game up. 137 to 137. Kevin Durant misses a shot at the buzzer, overtime. And again, I don't know if people realize how good you have it with Ja Morant in clutch situations. Like, we've talked about, extensively about, the best way to use Ja and things like that. And I've said time and time again that, the heavy isolation style offense, dribble drive stuff, it isn't the most conducive to his skill set. I mean, he's Ja, so he's going to find ways to be effective at the end of the day. The pick and roll stuff, right, is where he really shines a lot of times. But he can do both. But it isn't the most, conducive to his skill set overall. But, I mean, for some reason, they'll throw it all out the window when the game's on the line. Look at this stat here, courtesy of my former co-host and friend of the show, Sean Coleman, here on Locked On Grizzlies. He said, since per shot data began in the 1996-1997 season, 200 NBA players have attempted more than 10 career shots to either tie or take the lead with 2 or less seconds left in the fourth quarter or overtime period of a game, regular seasons or playoffs. Only one of those 200 players is shooting at least 50% on such shots. So I'm going to say that again because that was a lot to throw at you. But basically, since 1996, 1997, 200 NBA players have attempted more than 10 shots to either tie or take the lead with 2 or less seconds to go in the fourth quarter or overtime of a game. Only one of those 200 players is shooting at least 50% in those situations. That one player, Ja Morant. This call 12 thing isn't some bluff for show. This is real. When the game is on the line, there's no doubt about it. You go to Ja Morant, and he could be shooting 4 of 25, 6 of 25, whatever you want to call it. When the game's on the line, he's a bug. He just finds a way. It's the it factor. It's the knack that coaches talk about. And he found a way in this game. It was a lot of perseverance for Ja. I mean, there were struggles early in the game. I do, if you want to talk big picture here a little bit, I'm not going to talk too much about it. That may be for a show later this week. But the shooting is concerning to a degree because the Suns are a bad defense and they don't have much rim protection. So Ja was able to get to the rim and he was able to draw fouls and things like that. But against certain teams who are much better at preventing you to score at the rim, like the Oklahoma City Thunder, it's going to need to make some jump shots. And 1 of 12 from three-point line isn't going to do it. So, that is what it is. But at the end of the day, Taylor Jenkins, Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, and others in the locker room, they really applauded Ja for the fact that he kept playing, he kept shooting. Ja was 0 of 8 on three-pointers, I think, to the early stretch of the third quarter. He was 0 of 5 on three-pointers in the first half. He kept shooting. And as Taylor Jenkins said, Taylor Jenkins did not complain about the shots. Taylor Jenkins said they were rhythm shots. He shot them with confidence. And he was rewarded for doing so. He was rewarded when he made the running three-pointer late in the fourth quarter to put the Grizzlies within one that gave them a chance to tie the game going into overtime. And he made, the shot that took them into overtime. He only made 1 3, but it was probably at the biggest moment that you needed a 3 in the game when you're down 4 points with 10 seconds left. You definitely needed a 3, in that situation. But Ja Morant delivered in this game. And this is just another reminder that, the Grizzlies have a bunch of great players. They got Ja Morant. They got Desmond Bane. They got Jaren Jackson Jr. Jaren Jackson Jr. had fouled out in this one. When the game was on the line, it was time to get the ball to Ja. He was rewarded for his perseverance from the three-point line. And then there was the free throw shooting. I mean, not the free throw shooting, excuse me. There was the frustration with the officials as well. And he worked through it. And, if you've been watching these Grizzlies games closest, you've seen it. Like, you've seen Ja at this point complain for a call or voice, however you want to describe it, vent his frustration to the officials. And the officials, after he drives to the basket and sometimes he's trailing beyond the play. We talked about it here on Locked On Grizzlies. I've talked about it, how that's something that, you want to limit because sometimes it could lead to easy scoring opportunities for the other team. And Ja kind of touched on that in this game after this game, because in the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, a little bit too, there were a lot of plays where he felt like he was fouled and he didn't get whistles. And maybe, those frustrations worked for him because he ended up getting 14 free throws in this game. But here's what he said. He said, coaching them stay on me about that. Just continuing to keep a positive body language. Obviously, that's tough when you're a competitor, so you're at a disadvantage. Look, I know there's a lot of people out there that consider themselves competitors, and I consider myself competitor. So I said, you know what? It makes sense. There's also the other competitive part of you that's like, oh, you gotta tone it down because you don't want to get this tech. You don't want to get this team a free point. You don't want to take any momentum away, all that stuff. There's also that competitive part where you have to be savvy. You have to be smart, all things considered. But Ja said it's tough when you're a competitor and you're not getting those free throws. So there is frustration with the officials. And, it's been a constant theme over the course of the season for him. He got 14 free throws in this game. And we'll see, how that continues to play out over the course of the rest of the season. Ja Morant's the way he's being officiated. But at the end of the day, 29 points from Ja, 7 of 25 shooting, 1 of 12 from three-point range, 14 of 14 from the free throw line. Did not miss a free throw. That was big as well. The Grizzlies needed Ja Morant to step up when Jaren Jackson Jr. went out of the game. And they needed a lot of other unsung heroes in this game as well.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Wednesday night features a ton of interesting NBA action. The Celtics are 4-point road favorites against the Pistons. The Raptors, 9.5 2.5-point dogs in Indiana, and the largest line of the night, Oklahoma City favored by 17 at Brooklyn. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators.
This felt very on par with Florida. Slow first half was brutal. I mean, again, you can't keep giving up 50 points in the first half. It's great that you could score 48 in the second half, but you can't keep giving up 51 in the first half. That's just not stuff that you can do and win. That's just not stuff you can do and win. It's just not acceptable. Not going to be a thing there. I will say this because I'm sure the chat's going to mention it. The officiating was bad, right? I think everybody can acknowledge that, or at least everybody here can acknowledge that. Officiating was bad. However, I will say this as well. I don't care. I don't blame games on officiating because my thought process is always play well enough so that officiating doesn't matter. So I don't care about that. But one huge difference that you see with this game, free throws were atrocious once again. Florida just can't do it. 18 for 29 from the free throw stripe, 62%. That's not going to win you a game, especially when your opponent shot 81.5%. If you're going to shoot like that and they're going to shoot like that from the free throw line, you're going to lose. Georgia was shooting 70% from the field at halftime. You're not going to win basketball games if you play like that. 70% from the field. Those are wide open threes. Or wide open shots, we'll say. You can take a bunch of D1 basketball players, and if you leave them wide open, that's basically what they would shoot, right? Like they'd shoot very efficiently. 70% would be great, right? Florida, you just can't play like that. You just can't. 11 for 32 from three. Will Richard was the only guy that actually showed up to play this entire game. I get it. Walter Clayton Jr. had 18 points. Walter Clayton Jr. Finished strong, but you can't have games like we saw multiple Gators have today and think that you're going to beat a quad one team. Look, I get it. People are going to be upset about, Georgia being unranked or just straight up losing to Georgia. I absolutely agree with you. But this is, once again, Will Richard showed up. No one else did. For a lot of times we saw maybe it was Walter Clayton Jr. being the one that showed up and a bunch of people didn't. Maybe Elijah Martin showed up and a bunch of people didn't. But I think this was one of the more egregious instances where one guy shows up for the whole game and for the most of the game, no one else is there, right? When Florida had 48 points, Will Richard had 24 of them. And it's not like he was shooting a ton. He finished with 30 points on 17 shots. That's incredibly efficient. Okay. This was a game where Florida just did not shoot well, did not defend well. And if you don't shoot well, if you don't defend well, guess what? You're not going to win the game. You're not going to win the game. It's honestly as simple as that. You're not going to win the games playing the way that you played. Like there's just no other way to put it. Florida, like playing defense the way you did in the first half, just horrible. Never going to win playing like that. Never going to win playing like that. And I mean, you shot 27 for 66 from the field. So you made, I'm pulling up the effective field goal percentage here just because I want to make a point here. So you shot 16 there, or 16 made twos, total of 66 free throw attempts. Florida's effective field goal percentage in this game is 49.24%. Okay. 49.24. We're going to remember that. We're going to remember that, and we're going to put in Georgia's numbers there. 49.24%, and Georgia shot 63.46% was their effective field goal percentage. And I bring that up to make the point that Todd Golden, again, big analytics guy, there's a big reason for that. The most important value in the 4 factors is that effective field goal percentage. And Florida lost it by what? 15%? You're not going to win games if your opponent is out shooting you by that much. Okay? Florida won the offensive rebounding battles. That's important. Florida won the turnover battle. That's important, especially because a lot of Florida's turnovers were steals. That's also very important there. But you're not going to win games if you're shooting the way Florida shot and defending the way the Florida defended, right? Getting to the free throw line, also important for the 4 factors that Todd Golden will live by. You lost there as well. Like, it's just, I know that people hate analytics because it leads to too many threes being made or attempted and all that stuff. But when it comes down to it, around the rim twos, catch and shoot threes, and for most of the game, Georgia shot like that. And for most of the game, Florida left them open to do that. Like, it's just, you can't play basketball the way that the Florida Gators played tonight and win. This is one of those games where we look at them and we say, what the hell? Like, we all can watch this team and see the immense level of talent on this roster. But they have games like this. They have games like this that genuinely make you doubt how deep of a run they're going to make in March Madness. Because it's not, when they play this elite team. It's not when they play an elite defense. It's not because another team's being physical. It's not because of this or because of that. This is just a hot and cold team. And like the other Locked On SEC hosts, they'll take jabs at me or whatever because I will call Florida a very hot and cold team. And, they'll go, like, you're 18-3. How is it hot and cold? So hot and cold. But then you watch the game and you watch the team and they're so hot and cold about things. And it's not just, this game they're good, this game they're bad. No, it's they played like crap randomly. Thomas Hawk shot 3 for 11. That was the most uncharacteristic thing we've seen from him in a long time. Ruben Chinilu fouled out on the stupidest foul, as in bad call. I will say that. It's just body up and dude bumps into him, falls down, and that was ridiculous. Will Richard played great, right? Played great basketball. Was aggressive defensively, made plays, was attacking the board, scoring. I mean, again, 30 points on 17 shot attempts is nuts. Walter Clayton Jr., 5 for 13 shooting, was ghost for most of this time. And I get it. He made big shots down the stretch. That's important. That was valuable. He helped you close the gap and take the lead there for a second. But think about it this way, the same way people complain about refs. If you shot halfway decent for most of the game, or even if you shot halfway decent in the first half, you're never in a position where you're down 26 and trying to come back. It's crazy. Alex Condon shot 1 for 7, 0 for 3 from 3, and the dude just wasn't even attempting threes for the first, 12 minutes of the game. They were kind of just leaving him, and he wasn't even attempting threes. And I will say another thing here that frustrates the hell out of me, but I got to say it. Ruben Chinilu and Micah Hanlogton, while I love them, while I think they're great offensive rebounders, and I think that they can contribute defensively, and I think they can do stuff for you offensively, their lack of ability to shoot from pretty much anywhere outside of the restricted area makes a defense so much easier for other teams.